Our next speakers, Claude and Craig, they'll be speaking on the data behind Creative Mornings. Claude is an astrophysicist, past Montreal speaker, CEO of Nexalogy. Craig is an award-winning journalist and expert with the Nexalogy system. They're incredibly good-looking and have glasses and are wearing blazers. Together, they've been analyzing our social media imprint for many months now, and I'm excited for them to be able to share some of their findings with us. Please welcome Claude and Craig.
So, yes, I'm an astrophysicist, and we do kind of do rocket science, and you may ask yourself, like, what does data have to do with creativity? Well, we kind of think that we could be your pocket rocket scientist. That's kind of like the way we kind of do. So we work with a lot of people, and the idea here is that we're going to show you an actual map of your community, I would say from a network to a community, and there's some really cool stuff. So that's the beginning of it, but the idea at the end is that we want you guys to all come. We have data on all of you.
In a not weird way.
It's good, not working with the NSA, but if you want to know afterwards how to like increase your imprint, how to work together to make Creative Mornings better, we're there to help you. So that's that.
Yeah, we'll be at the table back there. Just as a reminder, it was mentioned, but Claude did speak, one of the early events in Montreal. So if you want to check out his video, it's there. He talked about black holes and big data. So there you go. What more do you need to hear? Okay, so what did we do? So we used the Nexalogy system that enables you to bring in huge data sets and then draw out some insights from it. We looked at data using your hashtags, the Creative Mornings term. We looked on Twitter, we looked on Facebook, we looked on Tumblr. And so we generated some network maps, some interaction maps. These things we'll talk about a little bit to try and see, well, what does the community look like? What's, in terms of chapters, which ones are getting the most engagement? In terms of chapter hashtags, which ones are really trending the most? So that's what we did. And first thing, here's a list. These are like the top 10 most retweeted accounts. So headquarters is at the top, and you can see your cities there all the way down to Swiss Miss, your founder. So I'll read them because I see people stretching. So there's headquarters, DC, Bogota, Oakland. Yes, woo! Please. There you go. Montreal, where we're from. Yeah! New York City. Auckland, Vancouver, and Austin. And of course, Tina. There you go.
Way to go.
Yeah, so these are the ones that are obviously getting retweeted the most. And just as a little bit of background on that, when we looked at kind of the timeline information of when there are spikes of people talking, it of course is on the Fridays when you have events. And there's a low point and then a spike when lots of events happen. And that's when most retweeting is happening. So we also calculate influencers. So these aren't just sort of people that are broadcasting, but people that are being interacted with as well. Again, headquarters is at the top of this. Now, there's a gentleman in New York who's the second one there. Yangbo, are you here? No, he's not here. So he's all over the place, and one of the reasons why is he tends to do really great storifys that aggregate all the best tweets and comments about what goes on at New York Creative Mornings events. So it's great for people who attended. It's a nice recap for people who didn't go. Now he's basically doing this, this reporting and curation. In terms of chapters, we see Bogota again up there. So you guys are doing a great job. Congratulations. New York City, again, one of the ones we mentioned last time as well. Why is nobody cheering for New York? Like, we're here. Montreal. Yeah, there you go. Okay. DC, Vancouver, Austin, Texas again. So you see some of the same names, obviously. And then Design Feast. Is he here? He's in Chicago. So he is a live tweeter and a content producer for the team in Chicago. Is Chicago here? Are you guys here? Yeah. So he's on your team, right? And because he's producing content about the events, he's gaining some influence by that. People are talking about what he's creating and sharing. So obviously there's some lessons around, doing wrap-ups and curating content around the events to get people to interact with that and help broadcast it. So the other thing before we look at your network, and Claude will take you through that, is just, here's a list of the top hashtags. So these are the ones that are getting, this is purely by activity. So the amount of tweets that are on these hashtags. So again, no surprise, Creative Mornings is the top one. But again, we see a lot of the same names. So Montreal is there, Bogota is there, New York is there, And then we see sometimes some of the themes pop up, like failure was one that really bubbled up of the ones for the data that we looked at. And again, we were taking data from May to September is what we're doing here. And then Texas again, Houston, and color, another one of the themes. So these are the ones that are getting a lot of activity, and I guess I would say is the names that I've said several times. If you want to talk about maybe working on social strategy or other things or engagement strategy for your chapter, I would be seeking out people from Montreal and Bogota and New York and Vancouver and Austin and these ones. So Claude, why don't you tell them about what we learned about their network?
So when we need network analysis, is anybody familiar with this kind of stuff, like graph theory? So go to the next graph. I think it's better to explain. So this is what we would call a caveman network. So this is actually who is talking to whom, okay, inside the Creative Mornings, if you want, community. You're not a community yet at this point. So what you see is that it's a bit of a spoked wheel, and there's a whole bunch. The reason it's called a caveman network is that early hominids kind of likes to be really inbred, right? They used to live in a valley. Who saw Quest for Fire?
And we mean that in an inoffensive way, guys.
Right? But they used to kind of like live in a valley, maybe 6 or 7 generations, and one guy would cross the valley and marry somebody from another valley, and then that guy would be the person who's in the middle now, which is Creative Mornings HQ. What we saw, and this is the earlier data, what we were seeing earlier is that you guys were not a community. There's a huge difference between a community and a network. This is a network, where there's one person in the middle who's charged with like kind of keeping everybody together, but otherwise everybody's talking to themselves, okay? So it's kind of like having several little house parties instead of one big house party. So, but now we took more data later, and
yeah, this was like January to April, and then we looked again from May to September.
Congratulations. This is a community. You're actually talking to each other. This is very important. I think one of the things now that when we talked with HQ about this way back when, this was actually something that we thought we would help you do, and we were going to help you make this even better, but you guys did it yourselves. So round of applause for everyone. Great job. Right? A few of the things I could recommend is just, everybody has their Twitter IDs, just start following each other now. Okay, so every Twitter ID of every Creative Morning should follow every other Creative Mornings Twitter ID so that you know what's happening in the other chapters. That's the difference between a network and a community. One of the ways I explain this is that when you go to a bar, there's booze, there's music, there's all kinds of stuff, but it's not as fun as a house party, right? Why do house parties rock? Because most people know there's one person there who can do intros to everybody else. And so far, Tina's been doing that, okay? But now this is the opportunity for you guys to really make this a house party.
Awesome. So just to recap the points, that was awesome. We couldn't do it without putting a graphic of a caveman there at some point, obviously. So we do think that there is more that can be done to connect chapters. When we look at it, and you can come and talk to us after, we'll show you which ones we see your chapters connected to. Usually there's only 1 or 2 other chapters that we see other chapters connected to. There may be other opportunities. One of the things that just jumped out at us, however, is that Squarespace and MailChimp, most of the chapters were actually connected to those terms. So you're actually doing a really good job for your sponsors by making sure that there's awareness of them from basically every chapter. So that's a good thing. That's delivering value to sponsors.
Are the sponsors here right now? Okay.
There. You're getting good value.
You're getting amazing value out of this. Okay?
Good. So now we did find one chapter that seemed to actually have a bunch of different connections. And so we sort of dug into the data and we said, well, why is that? And what are they doing? And this is what we found. So apparently somebody from Auckland's chapter ended up in Montreal at one point, and they actually connected in person, as you're all doing now, and they tweeted it out. They used the hashtags for both of the cities. And so really the message here is you have the opportunity to create connections and to really build that community because you're here in person. And by doing it here in person, that's going to be reflected in sort of that online digital community. So really take advantage of that moment. So here's the last piece that we looked at. We looked at, so what do people talk about? When they use the hashtag, when they go to the event, what do they talk about? What resonates with them? And so here are a few things to look at. So number one, these are the top 10 words that came out. So obviously Creative Morning, number one, creative, number two, and then, speaker, artist, design, create, photo, theme, illustrator, freedom. So they're all kind of in the realm of, the world of creativity, the world of design, and these kinds of things. And again, you can sort of see them popping up here. So those are the top 5, but then we put in the recent themes that we had looked at in this data. And so the themes of freedom, heritage, color, failure, minimal, they all sort of got on that top words list. So people were talking about them as well. So that's probably a good thing. Particularly I think freedom seemed to resonate a lot with people. So that's what we saw in terms of the concepts. In terms of the content, so what do people talk about? Well, they definitely talk about speakers. You saw it as one of the top 10 words, speaker. This was a talk, I think it was in New York, got pretty good, 335 notes on Tumblr. From somebody sharing it. So, this one did really well. The content, the speakers really matters. Not a surprise, but people do talk about that. They talk about going to see them, they talk about what they heard, and these kinds of things. The next one is food. So they have photos, people talk about the food, people take images. These are shots from actual Creative Mornings events that we found through people sharing them on Tumblr and Twitter. Look at those donuts from Tijuana. That's pretty good. So food is a really big part of the experience for people. And so I encourage you, as you're brainstorming, to think about ways you can incorporate food in the experience even more, because we really see engagement when there's something special there for people to eat and engage in. And so an example of the kind of tweet that you'll see, they feel spoiled because they got like a full breakfast bar at this particular one in San Francisco. So people really tend to talk about that. I know they talk about food a lot on social media anyway, but it's sort of connected to you as well. And then we looked at some of the words that people use. And there were a lot of emotive words that maybe weren't in the top 10, but words like inspire and amaze. And I think it speaks to what people want from the experience. And so we pulled out some tweets where we looked at the word inspire. And this was one of the top sort of emotive words. And here's somebody on their way to the event, and that's what their goal is, obviously. They're going to this event to get inspired. Again, talking about the speaker and being inspired by the speaker, thanking the organizers there. So you see all these kind of key concepts are connected to emotions. Inspiring us to risk failure. So the theme comes up, but they're inspired by the speakers. They're inspired by the themes, by the talks, and sometimes by the food as well. So this is somebody directly thanking a speaker for an inspiring talk. Here again, somebody talking about the location where they were. We see people talk about the location a lot, so making effort to find a cool location is probably going to pay off for you as well. And again, if you have food, coffee and donuts, they're inspired for the day, they got the food, they got the talk. It's all, that's all part of one experience. So here again are some amazing, these are from Oslo. Anybody here from Oslo? Nice food. The things that we would just sort of put for this as questions for you folks, what role do food and location play in what you do now, and what might other ways that you can sort of step that up? How can you create that connection? You're here in person. How do you start it here and grow that community even more? Also the content is really important, the speakers. So how do you share your great content? How do you create it so that it's not just these spikes on the Fridays, but actually there's things going on in the middle of the week and that it, continues to be talked about. Combining location, the speaker, the food, and maybe some elements of surprise to really give people those emotive experiences. So those are some things to think about and some data to take with you. And hopefully it helps you in your brainstorming sessions. And again, if you want to dig in a little bit deeper or learn a bit more about it, we're going to be sitting in the back there. Anything else you want to add, Claude?
No, rock on.
All right, thanks, guys.